Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're here today. As you may have guessed, since Judith is not sitting next to me, she is in Spain today, enjoying a 9-day kind of retreat with her son and her son's wife, which is wonderful. And she told me that she's tired of walking on cobblestone, but that she's loving Spain. And so she's having a delightful time. I got to stay here so that I could do the Sunday talk and go to my wonderful job that I have and live my life. So anyway, today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to open with a treatment, but for those of you that are just tuning in, we're going to do question and answer today. And we're going to record everybody live. And if you don't want to be seen, just turn off the video portion, because when we do rebroadcast it, you'll be on it. Fortunately, looking at the sidebar here where I see all of you, you look really great. So I'm sure you're all going to want to be recorded. So I'd like to open with an opening treatment. If you'll come together with me and just hold on to the idea that God in you is you, as you is you in you, that God is everywhere present all of the time. And knowing that this God that is present all of the time and working through you is manifesting all that you require and is working with you on all that you desire. And that we know that what we require is given to us easily and comfortably and beautifully. We know this, that even when it is disguised in forms that we're not able to easily recognize, that everything that comes to us is for us. We say thank you. Good morning. Now, please, we're now recording, but we're recording live, and we're going to do question and answer today. So if you're not on and you're not talking or not asking a question, if you would mute yourself, that would be great. So I'd like to start out with, what burning question does anyone have today that they would like to have me begin talking about in relationship to our teaching, to our spirituality, to our nature? And if I can't answer it, then I'll be embarrassed publicly.
I have a question.
Yes.
I haven't been feeling spiritual in the sense that I don't feel a strong connection with being led or connected. And I haven't been taking the time to meditate, but I feel like my life is sort of a breathing meditation, and I don't always feel like I have to do a discipline, but maybe I do. So that's what's on my mind and heart.
Okay, let me talk to that. That's a wonderful, wonderful, good question to start with. First off, what we typically give our attention to is what gets the focus of our emotion. We have an emotional response to our thoughts. We have an emotional response to our daily living. And that emotional is kind of like a soundtrack in the background, a musical soundtrack. If you can imagine that you're living a movie and there's a musical soundtrack in the background, we have to take care of that soundtrack. That is, we have to find a way to keep that soundtrack the kind of thing that we want to listen to that will make this up. Right. Now, as I was hoping, if the soundtrack that we're listening to in the background is not in favor of us, it doesn't support our spirituality, then we need to change that. Now, when I say change that, we need to give our visual senses, our auditory senses, all of our senses an opportunity to have something to focus on that uplifts us, which is why we meditate, why we read spiritual material, why we hang out in nature, why we do things that encourage and empower a spiritual awareness, a spiritual awakening. You can't have that spiritual experience if you're not doing something that would encourage it to become that would be in the forefront. And so often what we do is we get lax in our practices, and then what happens is we seem to lose touch with the emotion and the heart and the aliveness that goes with that. And we don't realize that since we're not doing something in favor of it, then we're not actually connected. If you've ever watched a movie that you heard about the actor that you like, and so you turn the movie on, and, oh, I really like that person. He's such a good actor, or she's such a good actress. And so when you say that, what you're doing is you're highlighting your interest and your enthusiasm and your excitement over whatever they're going to do. And when that person shows up on the screen, you say, oh, wow, yeah, they're here. I love that. This is almost my favorite actor. So, but what you're giving is your undivided attention, your energy, your enthusiasm, and your aliveness to that experience, which makes it much better. And if something happens in the movie that isn't particularly wonderful, you overlook it. And the reason you overlook it is because the soundtrack in your mind is saying, this is such a good thing. This is so wonderful. We need to pay attention to the emotional state that we're in. And if we're not in an emotional state that we would call spiritual or awakened or alive or feeling good, the question is, what can I do to center myself to get to that, to encourage that? That is why we meditate. I meditate every day. I meditate. If I don't have time to meditate during the day, when I go to bed, I meditate for 15 or 20 minutes, and I usually fall asleep somewhere in the process of my meditation. If I don't have any other time than that, or when I get up in the morning, before I get out of bed in the morning, I'll spend 10 minutes meditating to set the stage for the emotional climate or the emotional tenor of my day. So what I would invite you to do, Alex, is look at, during the course of your day, at how am I feeling? And if I'm not feeling good, what could I do to encourage that kind of feeling? Now, one of the things you can do is take 2 minutes and say, what am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for? What things in my life am I grateful for? And have 5 or 10 minutes of gratitude. A moment of gratitude opens us up. Now, the other thing that I would suggest, which I just learned recently from another person, it was a wonderful idea. He was saying, when you meditate, meditate on love. And I thought, okay, I can meditate on love. And I saw immediately, the 4-letter word love. He said, meditate like you were holding a baby, or meditate like you were holding a puppy. And remember the feeling you had when you held that puppy and that puppy looked up at you and started to lick you. Remember that feeling and have that feeling be the guiding feeling in your meditation. I thought, wow, what a beautiful idea, because so often we get so disconnected from our heart and our spirit. And when we get disconnected from that, we then evaluate life as not being as good or as promising or as positive as we'd like it to be, when in fact we've tuned out of that love connection that we can have. So tune into the love that you can remember, tune into the love that you have. If you can't find anything that you can love or that you have loved, or that you're in the kind of space that doesn't allow that, then practice a prayer of gratitude. Hopefully that's useful. And now what I'd love to do is to hear another question.
That's great. Thank you. It's very rich in feeling and thinking.
Great.
So I will
That's wonderful.
take that in.
Now, what I know about human nature is that if you're not thinking positive, then you're not necessarily thinking negative. But if you're not thinking positive, you have a lot more room for thinking negatively. And so what I notice is what I occupy my mind with sets the stage for the life I'm living. I often don't realize I have an unconscious fear or anxiety that can be running things from behind the scenes. And when that's happening, then without realizing it, the soundtrack is rather menacing, and I don't even notice it. I've been working with a friend recently on a project, and the project includes trying to find artwork that matches copy, and there's a lot of steps and stages, and it's really lots of hours of work. And I had a couple of choices. One of my choices was I could say, well, this is going to be a daunting task. I think I already did that about a week ago. This is going to be enormous. This will be a lot of work. I wonder if I can do it. I hope she likes it. What if it isn't any good? I mean, just all of these tapes go off in your head. The soundtrack was like the movie Jaws. You could hear the shark in the background. And I'm thinking, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this. I'm going to have to give it this. What am I going to say that I can't do this? And then I faced it. I said, well, actually, this could be a wonderful and exciting adventure. You're an artist. Why can't you do this? I thought, that's true. Why can't I? And the music changed. And I began approaching the first copy that she had. And then I looked at her and I thought, I've got 11,000 pieces of artwork. How can I? What do you mean? How can I? Look at the wealth of opportunity here. Well, by the end of the day, I had already created 45 pages, and I was actually singing in my head and loving every last minute of it and thinking, what a wonderful thing. I hope it's going to be more, because I don't want to stop. I shifted from the soundtrack in the background, which was terror, to a soundtrack of joy and opportunity. And whenever we make that switch, things get better. Now, what we have to do is we have to pay attention to that there is a soundtrack in the background. Years ago, if I had felt that soundtrack playing it subtly in the background, I would have had a scotch and soda and felt better. And the reason I would have felt better was because I would have masked that feeling rather than asking myself, that feeling that I'm having, is that valid? Does that actually fit the circumstance that I'm in? And if it does, can I change it? So we often don't realize the emotional baggage that we're carrying that is blocking us from moving forward. That's a huge thing to pay attention to. So what I would ask you to do is pay attention to your emotions, not to have them tell you what to do, but to tell you the state that you're in. Because when we listen to our emotional body, we're really getting information that's useful and important. And then we can use our conscious mind to make a decision about, do I want more or less of that? So let me do it another way. You choose a piece of music. You choose a piece of music both intuitively and intellectually, because you have to actually go find the music. You have to go find a selector to select it, and you have to put it on and play. That's with your head. You let your heart embrace it and enjoy it. This is a great situation in which the heart and the mind are working together. We don't ever want to shut down one in favor of the other. We want to use them in harmony if we can. And that's why we've got them both. We don't, a lot of people will tell me, I just go by my intuition. That's actually not accurate. You go by your mind as well. You just don't notice it. Your mind is included in every decision you make. In fact, every cell of your body is included in every decision that you make, whether you know it or not. So why not allow it all to be part of the inventory of understanding, a place that you can go and look. Okay, I'm going to open up to another question. And thank you, Alex. That was wonderful. I needed that. You'll have to unmute yourself if you ask a question now. Okay, Alex, you're back now. There's probably another really great question lingering there in the back.
Okay, how do you separate the feelings from your mind, from your heart? How do you know the difference between the mind and the heart?
Okay, next question. Sure, make this difficult. Actually, the truth is you're not going to be able to do that. And the reason you're not going to be able to do that actually is because they're not separate. That is, the heart, the mind, and every cell of your body is in a relationship. It's in a wonderful and exquisite dance. You're always using your mind and you're always using your heart. That is, your heart is actually also talking to you. Your heart has its own intellect, it has its own conversation, but it's also in relationship to the brain, to the rest of your consciousness. So imagine, instead of how do you separate one from the other, that your whole unified expression of divine life, and that expression of you is seen and felt in different realms. So when you feel something in you put your hand on something and you feel it, whether it's something soft or something rough, your hand feels it, your heart feels it, your brain feels it, your brain sorts out what it is and what you should do more of. Your heart says, I like this or I don't like this. And there's this whole internal conversation that relates you to the thing you're touching that you have no idea is even going on, and you can't separate it. If you separate the heart from the brain or from the mind, what happens is, of course, you die because they're actually designed to they operate as one. And I think that the biggest myth that I keep seeing with people is they say, I want to be intuitively led. Well, when you said that, you were using your head. You couldn't separate your head from the decision to use your intuition. So in other words, when you say, I'd like to lead with my intuition, you're saying my intuition, that aspect of me that I don't fully have a grasp of in the normal vocabulary of life, I want to pay more attention to that, but I'm going to pay attention to it with my entire consciousness. And so we are integrated beings that spend an awful lot of time separating our parts and then separating ourselves from each other. And in doing so, we don't do ourselves any service. And I think that's really, really important. So what I would ask you to do when it comes to what you're listening to is, what do I want to give more attention to? When I listen to music, I have to set the volume. I set the parameters. Do I want more bass or do I want more high frequencies? I set the stage for how I'm going to listen. I decide on the chair I'm going to use to sit in, and I decide how far away from the music that I'll be. I have all of these decisions to make that all use all of my facilities and also allow my heart and my soul and my whole being to embrace the music. But I'm not just one part of me. And so I would ask you to look at your whole being and say, how is this being working today? And what can this being do to have a richer experience? And not try to dissect it or break it down, because I think, again, when we look at the parts, we miss the whole. Now, I don't know that that's a good answer to your question, but that's what occurs to me. What do you
Thank
think?
you.
Does it make sense, Marty?
Integration.
Yeah. And we seem to want to live in a world of separation where we separate ourselves from each other, believing that that person over there is different from me, therefore they're not me. We already know when we look at ourselves energetically, if we have the right kind of lens, that we see that when we stand next to each other, there's an astral body that overlaps. We know that we have energy that connects with other people, even when we don't know it. And we also know from research that's been done that you can have a thought here, and that thought can be received thousands and thousands of miles away by another person. If that's true, then we're not just one enclosed being. We're really kind of open and fluid and connected in a much grander way than we ever suspected. And unfortunately, we keep limiting ourselves by our identity, our physical shape, our resume, our story, and that keeps us from appreciating what's possible. Now, I want to take one step further. When it comes to healing, if we're truly separate in all ways and we're not connected, then if I do prayer treatment for you and ask that you would experience a healing, that couldn't be possible. But if in fact we're all connected, we actually have one big voice, then I can speak for you into you and you into me, and we're actually into each other in a very grand and fluid kind of way, which means that somebody that's 1,000 miles away is just as connected to you as your skin is, and that you can have a prayer for them that would give them an instant experience of healing, even though they don't physically appear to be a part of you. They are a part of you. And if you want to get really esoteric and we look at extraterrestrial beings and we look at spirits that live in different dimensions, you suddenly realize that we live in a layered universe, and that this layered universe is all connected. And that our thoughts and our prayers and our ideas and our experiences are registered in a larger sphere than we've ever imagined. And it's forever changing. Hopefully that's useful.
Thank you, Bob, so much for this wonderful.
You're welcome, Judy. You're very still. Do you have
As I should be.
Right, yes. Do you have a question?
No, I think our time is up. No.
No, we're good. We have a few more minutes. Yeah, we have more time.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
There are things that I want to change in my diet to healthier food. And the Bible and Spirit is saying to me, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. So how do we embody that temple of the Holy Spirit to stay more disciplined? What do you do?
Okay, so let me put away the chocolate, the donuts, the cheesecake, all that good stuff. I mean, that's a terrible question to ask me on a Sunday morning. It's a great question. I guess the first thing that I would say, and I do say this to myself, but all that I eat is holy. All that I eat is good, and my body registers it in a beautiful and wonderful way. There is nothing bad about what I eat, because if I say there's something bad about what I eat, then something bad has to happen, because of course there has to be an outcome for the thing that I've said. So what I would say first is everything nourishes me, but I'm able to make choices that nourish me in ways that may even feel better than I feel right now. I'm going to make new choices rather than better choices. And the new choices I'm going to make are going to be based on the idea that some things serve me better than others. And I want the things that serve me best to be most on my plate. And so it's about serving yourself the very best that can be served to you, and taking in all of it as being good. When I was younger, and I can remember my parents putting peas on my plate that I thought were something that had come from hell, along with something that I wanted to eat, I segregated it, and I had a notion that one thing was bad for me and that another thing was good. It took me a long time to get to the point where I realized peas were probably better for me than steak. Now what I know is that steak and peas are as good for me as I say they are. And what I know about that is that I can choose fewer steaks and more peas because my body may like that more. But what I need to do in the first place is to say that I am the creator of the good that I experience in my life. I am that vessel that can transmute the negative into the positive, and that I can be and am alive in the most grand and powerful way that is possible. So then what we don't do is we don't say, well, that's good, that's not good. We're so quick to judge. Now, you could ask yourself, what I do is when I go to the store, is I don't bring home things that I don't want to have, I don't want to be tempted by that cause me to gain weight or not feel as good as I'd like to. I would say I don't have as good a relationship with some foods that I should have or could have. And if that's true, then maybe those are foods I should stay away from because I don't have a good relationship with them. My relationship is they cause me to gain weight. My relationship is they cause me to have gas or some other thing that I don't like. So what I'm really talking about is I want a preferred relationships rather than that's good or that's bad. I think macaroni and cheese is a preferred food. I think it's a food of the gods. I also know that my body says more is better, and that every time I gain a pound, the macaroni and cheese seems to be the thing that's helping me with it. So I think, okay, I think I need to date macaroni and cheese less often and try something else that works a little better for me. Again, I'm not going to judge it. I'm simply going to say this relationship is toxic after a while because I have to have limits. And so it's a wonderful, loving, kind dance that we do rather than that's good, that's bad. And the other part of that is my father, I can remember him eating a quarter pound of butter on a piece of toast. And because he loved butter and he loved toast and he ate as much of it as he wanted, he didn't die fat, he never got diabetes. And, you know, so what was in his consciousness? That those were good things. And nobody told him that they weren't good. And that was, of course, a long time ago when butter was actually good before it was replaced by margarine, which was better, which we now know is bad.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good,
like
good. I hope that is the mission. Thank you. We got time for one more question.
Good morning, Bob. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Maria.
Believing in treatment, believing in miracles. How do we handle times when things don't go the way we hope or expect them to? When surgery doesn't go the way it's supposed to? When pain is immeasurable and painkillers don't work?
Got it. Let me do the best I can to address that, because we are all of us at some point in our lives going to have those kinds of experiences, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in surgery, whether it's in any number of other platforms or experiences. And I think the first thing that I say to myself is, no experience that I'm having is a permanent experience. That is, everything is in process. I'm not thrilled or I don't like or I'm not enjoying this part of the process, but it's part of a process. We tend to take an event and make it something more than we hold on to it as an event. And we say this event is terrible and I can't stand it. But and it's true, it's hard to stand. In fact, sometimes we can't stand it. And there's even times when, because we can't stand it, that we tune out or we go away. But it's all part of a process. When I talk to people who've survived horrendous, awful things, there is a point at which they are on the other side of that. And everything that they've gone through has been part of what they've needed to experience in order for that soul and that being to have the full life experience they signed up for. I think for many of us, if we knew some of the pain we were going to be enduring or having to experience, we probably wouldn't have signed up. But I think because we have amnesia from the time of birth until the time of death, we don't realize what we signed up for, and that's a good thing. It also allows us to have a full and an extraordinary experience with whatever is occurring, however good or bad it is, in terms of our idea of it. Pain is a horrible thing for us to manage. It's also a profound attention getter, and it also tests all the limits of our consciousness. It also teaches us what we need to know when it's over, what we've learned from it. It's an extraordinary thing, and it is not fun, and it is not easy, but it is also necessary, and it's also a part of the human experience. So if it wasn't supposed to be a part of the human experience, we wouldn't have it. And so that's a tough one. And I know I had a knee replacement, and I can't think of anything that hurt more or that I liked less or that upset me more than that experience of being in constant pain after the nerve block wore off and I thought I was going to be fine. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is just, well, the interesting thing is not only did I survive it, but I learned a lot about myself in that kind of stress. I learned a lot about myself having to endure that. And I made decisions about a lot of things based on the strength that I had that I didn't know I had. And so we're much more than we think we are. And all I can say to those experiences when you're having them is know that you're doing the best you can, and that none of this was not for your highest and best, even when it feels like it's your lowest and your worst. And that's not a great answer. It just turns out to be the best answer I can think of at this particular point in time, and hopefully it's useful.
Thank you, Bob.
We're running out of time now, so because we've done a different kind of a process today, I'm going to do a closing treatment, then I'm going to go off the recording, and then we can just all talk together. So I want to thank you all for being here today. But before I do that, I also want to ask people that are involved with this work and who see this, if you would like to contribute to our organization, you go to cslpalmbeaches.com, cslpalmbeaches.com. And on our menu, you'll see a place to donate. And if you would like to donate, we would love to have your donation. This is not something that we do for free. It costs us a considerable amount of money to be able to continually have a ministry. And so we do really appreciate your support. It makes it possible to do this. If this was useful for you today, then please make a contribution. And if it wasn't useful for you today, please make a contribution. Whatever. Okay, so I'm going to end now with the closing treatment. Today we've come together to be together in mind, body, spirit. We've come together to be together and to share the experience of togetherness in a way that enriches each of us. And knowing full well that this has happened, we go out from this experience enriched and empowered to discover still more about ourselves in a richer, fuller way. We know that who we are is extraordinary, is amazing, and is far richer than we have ever suspected. And whatever the mountain is that we feel we have to climb, it is climbable. And when we get to that top, we discover exactly what we need to know and say thank you. So today we say thank you for all that we have gathered, all that we have learned, and all that we are. And we say thank you to all that have supported, helped, and encouraged us along our way. We know this to be true. We say thank you for it. And together we say